Ethan Williams had lived in the quiet town of Maplewood all his life, where the biggest event each year was the summer fair, and everyone knew each other by name. Life was predictable, and Ethan often found himself wishing for something exciting to break the monotony of small-town life. He never imagined that wish would be granted in the form of a new neighbor. It happened on a dreary October afternoon. Rain poured from the sky, turning the sidewalks into streams, and Ethan had just finished his shift at the local grocery store. He hurried home, umbrella in hand, splashing through puddles, when he noticed a girl standing under a tree, looking lost and soaked to the bone. She was clutching a drenched notebook, her dark hair plastered to her face, and her eyes had an odd intensity, like she was seeing the world for the first time. Ethan stopped and offered her a place under his umbrella. "Hey, you're going to catch a cold out here. You okay?" She looked up, startled, and for a moment, Ethan could have sworn he saw something in her eyes, like the reflection of distant stars. But he blinked, and it was gone. She smiled awkwardly and stepped under the umbrella, her shoulders relaxing. "Thank you," she said softly. "I was trying to figure out where my new house is." They walked together, and she explained that her name was Lyra. She and her family had just moved in next door to Ethan's house, a detail he couldn't believe he'd missed. Maplewood was the kind of town where a new face usually meant a flurry of gossip. But Lyra's arrival seemed to have flown under the radar. Lyra's voice was calm and melodic, but there was a hint of hesitation in her words, as if she was testing each one before letting it out. When they reached her front porch, she turned to him, still clutching her notebook close. "Thanks for the umbrella. It's nice to meet someone friendly on my first day here." "No problem," Ethan replied, feeling an odd warmth spreading through him despite the cold rain. "If you need anything, I'm right next door. See you around." She gave him a small smile, one that felt almost rehearsed, and disappeared inside the house. As Ethan walked back to his place, he couldn't shake the feeling that Lyra was different from anyone he'd ever met. But he chalked it up to the thrill of meeting someone new in a town where everyone knew everything about each other. Days passed, and Lyra became a regular part of Ethan's life. They met at the bus stop each morning, and she joined him during lunch at school, always listening intently as he talked about his favorite music, the shows he liked, and the people in their town. Lyra rarely spoke about herself, but Ethan didn't mind. He liked being the one to fill the silence, and she seemed genuinely curious about everything he said, as if she was absorbing each word like a sponge. One evening, Ethan invited her to his favorite spatter hill just outside town, where the view of the stars was breathtaking. Lyra seemed oddly eager, her eyes lighting up as she looked at the night sky. "It's beautiful here," she murmured, her gaze fixed on the stars. "Yeah, I like coming here when I need to think. The stars make me feel like there's more out there, you know, like the world is bigger than this town," Ethan replied, lying back on the grass. He glanced at her, noticing the way her eyes sparkled in the moonlight. "What about you? Do you ever feel like that?" Lyra hesitated, then lay down beside him, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes. More than you know." She turned to look at him, and for a moment, Ethan thought he saw that strange glow in her eyes again, like the reflection of distant galaxies. But then she blinked, and it was gone, replaced by a wistful expression. Ethan smiled. "Well, if you ever figure out what's out there, let me know. It'd be nice to know there's more to life than algebra homework." Lyra laughed, a sound that felt like music in the cool night air, and Ethan found himself smiling wider than he had in months. As the weeks went by, their friendship deepened. Lyra slowly opened up, sharing little bits about herself, how she loved the sound of the wind through the trees, or how she thought Earth's sunsets were the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that she spoke about these things like they were brand new to her, but he shrugged it off as just part of her mysterious charm. Yet, Lyra's true nature remained a mystery, even as she grew more comfortable in Ethan's company. There were moments when she would fall silent, staring off into the distance with an expression that spoke of secrets she couldn't share. Ethan didn't press her, but he often wondered what it was that she wasn't telling him. He figured they all had their own secrets, and besides, he was content just having her around. Life had become a little less predictable, and a little more interesting with Lyra by his side. As the first frost of winter settled over Maplewood, Ethan found himself looking forward to every moment spent with Lyra. He couldn't explain the strange connection he felt with her, but he knew one thing for sure: his wish for excitement had come true, though in a way he never could have imagined. And he had no idea just how much more mysterious and extraordinary things would become. As winter settled over Maplewood, Ethan and Lyra's friendship deepened. But so did Ethan's curiosity about his mysterious new friend. He couldn't quite put his finger on what made her different, but he noticed things. Lyra never seemed cold, even when the frost covered the trees and their breath fogged in the air. She had an uncanny way of knowing when he was upset before he even said a word, and she seemed to spend more time staring at the stars than any teenager he'd ever met. Sometimes, Ethan caught her looking at the night sky with a longing in her eyes that he couldn't understand. One afternoon after school, as they sat in Ethan's room playing cards, he decided to ask her about it. "You're really into space, huh?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "I mean, more than most people. It's like you know stuff that the rest of us don't." Lyra's hands froze, and for a moment, she looked almost frightened. But then she smiled, the expression not quite reaching her eyes. "You could say I have a special interest," she replied, shuffling the cards awkwardly. "The universe is full of mysteries." Ethan didn't push further, but his mind kept spinning with questions. That night, he couldn't sleep, replaying every strange interaction he'd had with Lyra. Was she hiding something from him? And if so, why? He felt a pang of guilt for doubting her after all. She was his friend, and friends trusted each other. But he couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing a crucial piece of the puzzle. The next day, Ethan's curiosity got the better of him. While Lyra went to the library to study, he saw her backpack left behind, leaning against a bench outside. He knew it was wrong to snoop, but a strange impulse pushed him forward. As he unzipped the bag, he found something that made his breath catch in his throat. Sleek, silver device, about the size of a tablet, but covered in symbols he couldn't recognize. It was unlike anything he'd ever seen before. He pressed one of the glowing symbols, and suddenly, the screen filled with images, planets spinning in distant star systems, strange landscapes with alien skies, and charts in a language that looked like stardust etched on glass. "Ethan, what are you doing?" He spun around, heart racing, to see Lyra standing behind him, her face pale and eyes wide. She looked panicked, more so than he had ever seen her. Her usual calm demeanor had vanished, replaced by something close to fear. Ethan clumsily shoved the device back into her bag, his face flushed with shame. I'm sorry," he stammered. I don't know what I thought I'd find, but I had to know." "What is that thing? What's going on?" Lyra closed her eyes and took a deep breath, as if bracing herself. When she spoke, her voice was barely more than a whisper. "I didn't want you to find out this way, Ethan, but I guess I owe you the truth." She led him back to the hill where they often stargazed, her expression serious and distant. They sat down on the familiar patch of grass, the cold biting at Ethan's face. And Lyra looked up at the stars before turning to him. I'm not from here, she said finally, her voice trembling. Not from this town, not even from this planet. I come from a star system hundreds of light years away. I was sent here to study human emotions, to learn what makes your species so complex. Ethan's mind reeled. He felt like the ground was shifting beneath him, as if reality itself had been turned inside out. You're saying you're an alien? He laughed nervously, hoping she was joking, but her expression remained grave. He remembered the images on the device, the strange glow in her eyes, and the way she had seemed so out of place in their small town. Slowly, his disbelief began to fade, replaced by a dawning understanding. Lyra nodded, her voice barely audible. I didn't mean to deceive you. When I first came here, I thought I could just observe, blend in, and report back. But then I met you, and everything changed. I started to feel things I didn't understand, things I wasn't supposed to feel, and I realized that understanding humans wasn't just about studying them, it was about connecting with them, with you. Ethan sat in stunned silence, the weight of her words pressing down on him. His mind raced with questions, but above all, he felt betrayed. So this whole time, you were just studying me? Was I just an experiment? No, it's not like that. Lyra's voice broke, tears in her eyes. At first, maybe, but then I got to know you, and you were different. I wanted to understand you, Ethan. I wanted to be your friend. Now, I care about you more than anything. Ethan turned away, staring at the once comforting stars that now seemed distant. You should have told me, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I don't know if I can trust you anymore, Lyra. I thought we were friends, but you kept this huge part of yourself hidden. Lyra's shoulders slumped, her expression raw with pain. I'm sorry, Ethan. I never wanted to hurt you. If you want me to leave, I understand. They sat in silence, the night's chill sinking in. Ethan's mind was a storm of anger, confusion, and sadness, but beneath it, he remembered their shared moments, the way she listened like no one else. Despite everything, he couldn't imagine life without her. He took a shaky breath and turned back to her. I don't know how to feel, Lyra, but I don't want you to leave. Maybe I just need time. I still want to be your friend, if you still want to be mine. Lyra's eyes shimmered, and she managed a small, genuine smile. Thank you, Ethan. I promise, no more secrets. As they sat on the hill, stars twinkling above, Ethan felt the world shift. It wasn't the same as before, but as he truly looked at Lyra, he realized that maybe this new world wasn't so bad. It was filled with possibilities, and even though he was scared, hope flickered that their friendship might survive. Little did they know, this night marked the beginning of a journey beyond Earth's boundaries and into the mysteries of their own hearts. Winter melted into spring, and the snow-covered hills of Maplewood transformed into blooming wildflowers. For Ethan and Lyra, the new season brought a balance between trust and uncertainty. Lyra kept her promise, sharing stories of her world, its shimmering skies, glowing oceans, and stars close enough to touch. She spoke of her loneliness, her mission, and the isolation of being far from home. Ethan listened, trying to grasp the enormity of her experiences. Even so, he was captivated by her stories, and felt his anger soften, replaced by empathy. One evening, as they lay on the familiar hill, Ethan asked, "Do you miss it, your home?" Lyra sighed, her breath forming a cloud in the cool air. "Sometimes, but before, I was just following orders. It felt empty. Now I feel like I belong somewhere because of you, Ethan. You made me see Earth differently." Ethan looked at her, moonlight reflecting in her eyes, warmth spreading through his chest. You're more human than you think, Lyra, he said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. You understand what it means to care, to feel connected. That's all it takes. Lyra's gaze softened, intertwining her fingers with Ethan's. A new, fragile understanding blossomed between them. And Ethan realized his feelings ran deeper than friendship knew, yet natural. Their bond grew stronger, a secret tying them together. But Lyra's connection to her home wasn't easily severed. One afternoon, while walking through the woods, a sudden vibration pulsed through the air. Lyra clutched her head, her eyes distant. Lyra, what's happening? Ethan asked, panic rising. He steadied her, but she struggled against something unseen. They're contacting me, she managed, her face strained. My superiors know I've grown too close to a human. They're telling me to leave. Ethan's heart clenched. Leave? What about us? Tears welled up in Lyra's eyes. I don't want to go, Ethan, but if I disobey, they'll come for me, and I don't know what they'd do to you. Desperate, Ethan clung to her hands. We'll figure it out. I'm not letting you face this alone. Lyra's voice trembled. If they take me, they could wipe my memory of you. I couldn't bear that. Ethan's chest tightened, but he held firm. If they do, I'll remind you. I'll find a way. We'll face it together. Lyra embraced him tightly, both clinging to a promise they couldn't fully understand. In the weeks that followed, her connection to her homeworld weakened, as if her superiors were giving her time to choose. Ethan cherished every moment, sharing Earth's simple joys, while Lyra revealed the wonders of her world. One evening, under a meteor shower, Lyra turned to Ethan, determination in her voice. I told my superiors I want to stay, that I found something worth more than any mission. Ethan's breath caught. What did they say? They said my mission has changed. They don't fully understand human connection. I can stay, but I can't reveal my true nature to anyone else. Relief washed over Ethan. So you're really staying? Lyra smiled, looking more human than ever. For as long as you'll have me. Ethan pulled her close, their foreheads touching. Together under the meteor-streaked sky, the distance between their worlds seemed to disappear. Ethan realized he didn't care where Lyra came from, only that she was with him, against all odds. They had found each other, and their story was just beginning. As they stood together, Lyra looked up at the stars, then back at Ethan, her smile hopeful. I think I understand now, she whispered. Understand what? Ethan asked. What it means to feel like you belong somewhere, to feel human. Ethan held her as the meteors painted the sky, each one a promise of their future. For the first time in a long time, Ethan felt like his life was the adventure he'd dreamed of, one that began with a shared umbrella and stretched out before them, as limitless as the stars.